Hi, I'm Dave from KMS Squared, and today we're going to be going over the process of soldering our customizable UFO light. Okay, some of the things you're going to need solder. You're going to need a soldering iron with a fairly small tip, a pair of scissors, and some tape. And of course, on your UFO strip, it will need to be the newer version will have 27 LEDs, and the older version has 30. You'll have your piece of heat shrink that will come with your UFO strip. Some nice to haves, magnification, and a heat gun. You can also use a lighter for the heat shrink. Okay, let's get started. On your new UFO strip, you'll find that there are two locations where you can cut and resolder on the pigtail. This one here is 5 inches, and this is at 3.75 inches, and this is measured from the inside of the ring right here. So if you're sizing up your press, you want to measure from where this point would be down to this point, and that's how you can determine where you need to cut it. And keep in mind that once you do cut these, that you will not be able to rejoin the pieces. So once you've cut it, then you are committed. The first step that we need to do is we need to test. We want to make sure that before you start, that the light works. Check all your connections, make sure everything's good, and there's no intermittent connections in there, and this one is good. So go ahead and turn it off, disconnect from the power. Remember to remove the power, because if you try to cut this with the power on, you'll short it out. With your kit, you'll receive a small piece of heat shrink, and you'll need that for this. Okay, so what we'll do first is we will remove the pigtail, and the best way to do that, see if I can get that on camera here, is just to hold this with your thumb and forefingers, and then if you just take the soldering iron and just put it right on that. Now this will create some fumes, so keep that in mind. You'll probably want to use some ventilation. And then you go ahead and remove that. And this generally will pull right off, but sometimes you will need to cut it, but fortunately I was able to just pull that right off. Now, first thing you need to do is go ahead and put this piece of heat shrink on. All right, next, let's say we have determined we want to cut it right here at the 5-inch mark. And you will see there is a black line. That is where you need to cut it. Just take a pair of scissors, snip it. Simple as that. Next step, go ahead and tape this down. This will make it so much easier. Okay, here we go. First, you'll take your flux solder, take your soldering iron, and your soldering iron will need to be, I like it around 375. Nice and warm, because what will happen is you want this solder to flow really well, and you just touch it onto the solder pad here, and then take your soldering iron, and then you want to leave it on there just a little bit of time to get the pad heated up so it will flow on there. Probably 2 or 3 seconds depending on the temperature of your soldering iron. Okay, and one thing I'm going to do here before I get started, see these blobs of solder here? It's probably going to be more solder than we're going to need, so let's go ahead and clean those up a little bit. If you got more solder than or too much solder, then it's just not going to make a good connection. Okay. And you can see here we got the plus, and of course the other one's going to be the minus or the negative. And so what we will do here is you'll just put the soldering iron into the solder and then move the wire to it. You want to hold it in place for a couple of seconds because you need to have time for that to solidify. Okay. And it looks like we got a nice solder joint there. After it has time to cool just a second, so you want to pull on it a little bit and make sure that you have a good solid solder joint, because what can happen is if the solder pad does not get hot enough, then the solder will not bond properly to the solder pad, so then it can break off. You'll have a good connection, but then any stress on it, it'll just break. All right, so let's go ahead and give it a test. And it looks good. Okay, so disconnect the power again. And now we can move the heat shrink up here. And remember, this is heat shrink. It will shrink a little bit, so you want to move it a little higher than you really think you'll need it, because if you put it like right there, it's going to shrink and then it's going to expose the solder joint. So you want to move it up a little bit, and you'll just take your heat gun remember to get both sides. And then we can just pull this up. And there you go. And we can just get one more test, make sure we're good to go. And it is working. And now it is ready for your particular application.